FCS Agent at the Bourbon County Extension Office, and I'm here to bring you the August Bourbon Bite-Sized Learning Reading Through the Calendar. If you haven't noticed, I'm flying solo today. I'm a little out of my comfort zone, and I miss Casey. Casey's spending some time with her family, which is very important for all of us, especially right before school starts. I hope you're doing something special with your family this weekend or today, those last minutes before we get back into that routine of school. But today, I don't have anybody to remind me of all the ingredients and the amounts, so bear with me as I use my notes, okay? But we're gonna make skillet pork chops with peaches. Okay, I have to confess, I was a little late getting to the grocery to get my peaches or to the farmer's market to get my peaches. So we are using canned peaches, and that's actually what the recipe calls for, but I was hoping to do some fresh peaches today, but everything I found was still not quite fresh enough. So maybe you can plan a little ahead of time and get some of those last peaches of the summer as well to use in your recipe. I'm going to be dealing with raw meat, so I'm going to put my gloves on and make sure I've already washed, but I am going to be doing some seasoning of some pork chops, okay? We've got 4 center cut pork chops here. You could use pork loin, you could use the boneless, you could use whatever your family prefers, but the recipe, we're using what the recipe calls for. And we're going to be seasoning those first. So I'm going to lay them out here on my plate so I can season all of them equally. And get rid of my container. So what we're using for seasoning today is we've got garlic powder, we've got salt, and we've got pepper. Very basic, okay? But we want to make sure we get all of that on it equally and on both sides. That's the garlic powder. And I believe that was a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. So the reason I've got my gloves on, I want to rub these seasonings in, and I want to get it on both sides. So I've just put all I had on the front side. So how am I going to get it on the other side? You'll lay them on top of each other. And some that I had on the top will now be on the bottom. Okay, we'll go ahead and put our salt and pepper on and do that process one more time so you can see it. So we have got a half a teaspoon of salt. Don't want to cover anything up. We want all of it to be equally seasoned. Okay, so, and then our pepper. Not quite as much pepper. It is 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper. And again, we're going to just rub that seasoning in a little bit, give it a little bit of a pat. Get some from the back on this one. I missed this one. And if you can just take it in amounts. And if you prefer more of any of these seasonings, or your family doesn't like garlic powder and you want to use a different seasoning, or if you want to use a fresh herb, experiment a little. We talk all the time about how everything except baking recipes are kind of a guide, and you figure out what works best for your family. That one seems to have a little bit of pepper on it that I'd like to get on another one. There we go. There we go. I think we're ready now. So we're going to turn on our heat to medium high. Okay, it is on. Let me turn it down to about medium high. Then we're gonna let this skillet heat up. We're gonna put a tablespoon of oil in. And we're gonna let it heat a little bit before. Let's see if I can do it behind. There we go. Let it kind of coat the whole bottom of the skillet. So our pork chops don't stick. There we go. We got one little contrary spot there. There we go. That heat is still a little high. I'm going to turn it down. So now we're going to put our pork chops. Oh, hear that sizzle? That means the skillet was good. You want that skillet to be a little bit preheated when you start, so you can get a good sear on those pork chops. Now this has had raw meat on it, okay, on this platter, so we want to make sure we don't use this platter again. And I want to make sure I don't touch anything else with my hand that's had the raw meat on it. So let's set that aside. At this point, if you didn't have gloves on, as soon as you got finished with that, you should go rewash your hands, okay? So we're going to brown both sides of the pork chops, and we're going to cook them. Oh, that's looking good. We're going to cook them until they're 145 degrees. I highly recommend you pick your style, you pick your brand of meat thermometer, but just be a little cautious with using, just judging by your eye whether a meat is done or not. So we're going to make sure we check it with our meat thermometer here. The pork chop should be at 145 degrees Fahrenheit when done. This is probably going to take about 4 to 5 minutes. I think your recipe says it doesn't give a time. You know why it doesn't give a time? It doesn't give a time because we're supposed to use our meat thermometer, which we're going to, right? And these do not seem to be sticking at all. I'm going to turn one so you can see the sear. Look at that. Oh. Now, these center cut pork chops have the bone in. And there's a lot of people prefer boneless. Boneless is fine. I will tell you that the most nutrients in a piece of meat are closest to the bone. So, kind of like my bone in. It also sometimes the juiciest and the most flavorful. But personal preference. When these pork chops are finished, when they reach the temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, we will take them out of the skillet, and that's when we'll put the peaches and the kind of like a sauce that we're going to make to go with the pork chops. broken the golden rule of frying here, and I don't know if it's because I'm joining you in your home or what, maybe a little nervous without Casey, but typically when you're frying meat, you should leave it as long as possible before turning. Don't be a turn person. That is when things start to stick. They're not truly sticking, they just not finished cooking on that side. So we will leave these until they're finished, and then we'll check them with the meat thermometer. I don't know if these are finished yet. They're starting to get brown and pretty. They smell delicious. But we're going to test them with the meat thermometer like I suggested. Now, if you'll remember, I said it's 145 degrees. You don't want to stick it right in the skillet because I'm testing the temperature of the skillet if I do that. Oh, this one's already up to 154. I think that one's done. Oh, yeah. Okay. So now we're going to plate these on a clean platter. Remember, don't put it back on the one that you use for seasoning. Oh, those look yummy. Set them aside. I'm going to turn my temperature down, and we're going to put the pan back on the stove. We're going to add our tablespoon of butter. We're going to add our vinegar. Now, vinegar sometimes jumps up in steam, so let's do this kind of gradually. Yeah, see that steam coming up? And our sugar. And peaches. And we are going to stir these continuously. The peaches were drained, by the way. I did use canned peaches. Oh, look at that. The sugar, butter, and vinegar mixture will create a new syrup, and it will thicken a little. And these will cook a little faster than if I'd used fresh peaches. If you're using fresh peaches, you need to make sure that you wash them under cool running water, and then gently rub the skin to get any possible chemicals that might have been on them, or any bugs or anything like that, just for protection of your family. Make sure you wash those well before using them, and then peel and pit them, and slice them or dice them. If you'd rather have them diced, I'm using slices because that's what was in the can, which is fine with me. Okay, this is going to take about 2 to 4 minutes for this all thicken. So I won't leave it, but I'm not going to, and I'll stir it frequently, but I'm not going to continue stirring because I need for that to bubble up a little bit and improve the. Oh, they're browning. Look at that. Delicious. Peaches are one of my favorites. We did the peach cobbler for our Bourbon Bite Size Learning 2 in July, and oh, I enjoyed it so much. Peach season will soon be over, and I will miss them. People will say, well, you didn't put any thickener in there. How is that going to thicken? How it's thickening is we did add sugar, and we added butter, and then there's natural sugar in those peaches, plus we're letting it kind of boil out some of the moisture that's in there. That vinegar helps with that as well. So it won't be real thick, but it'll be thicker than when we first originally put it in there, okay? Oh yes, now we're starting to get that brown on the peaches. It's thickening. We don't have as much syrup as we did. Now it's starting to cook down. We've got a brown syrup, completely coated peaches slices, and we're ready to return our pork chops to the skillet to join the peaches. We've got two food groups in this recipe. We've got our protein, which is our pork chops, and we've got fruit in our peaches. So we're going to meet two of our requirements. Go ahead and put these in here, and then I'll kind of spoon the peaches over top of them. I'm going to return this because this is just all the juices it was cooking on. Everything was at proper temperature with the meat thermometer. Oh my. Let's think too, maybe you're not a peach family. I love peaches, but think of other fruits that you could do the same recipe with. The first thing I think of are apples. Apples and pork blend very well. They follow the peach season, so that might be my next go round. But right now what we're trying to do is just mix that sauce and that pork chop together. What are some other fruits we might use? It recommends on here pineapple. Pineapple's another one we use with hams a lot, so pineapple would be good. And it's available year-round, canned. Cherries, blueberries, nectarines. Cranberries is one I haven't thought of either. That was recommended on there. So we're just putting that back in there long enough to coat everything together, let all the flavors blend, let the peaches kind of blend with the pork chop, let the sauce that we created with the sugar and the butter and the vinegar blend in with the pork chop, and then we'll be ready to plate it. We don't have to check the meat thermometer again because we know it was 145 degrees. Okay, so now let's get ready for pork chops for dinner. Make sure you get some of the peaches with the pork chop for each plate. And then we've got enough servings for 3 people. Okay. Actually 4 people, 3 more. That one's mine. No, we have, and what if you've got more than that in your household? Then you make a decision. Again, the recipe is a guide. It's not something that has to be followed that strictly. Personally, if I was just adding 2 more pork chops, I'd probably still stick with the same amount of peaches because you can see in the skillet, we have enough room in here to handle a couple more besides the 4 that we cooked. So use what works for your family. Pick the fruit that works for your family. Enjoy your pork chops and the protein and fruit that you're adding to your family's diet with this dish from our NEP Reading Through the Calendar. Also remember to contact us and let us know through Facebook what you liked about this meal, or maybe this wasn't your favorite one. We like to hear that too. We don't want to keep pushing recipes or encouraging recipes that aren't really liked, but we all have different likes and dislikes. So I think this is going to be one of my favorites, and I'm anxious to try it. Casey, I miss you. We'll see you next month when we do our next month Bourbon Bite-Size Learning. She'll be back for the third Friday when we do our Bourbon Bite-Size Learning 2. We do our plated up recipe, and she will be our host that day, and I'll be her sidekick, okay? I'm so glad you joined me today. Glad you were patient with me and being flying solo, and look forward to seeing you next time. If you want a recipe book, we still have a few calendars, okay? So better get them soon though. See ya. Enjoy your last days of summer. Bye.